Hello my friends, today we are going to be doing something a little bit interesting and a little bit different. So I am at some point in the future interested in making a full tier list for the StarCraft campaigns that is like well edited enough to be a main channel video. However, I want to actually get my thoughts out of the way and discuss them, and I figured that maybe I should just do that on the archives and see if you guys can either add anything to my thoughts or, you know, like have different opinions that might be worth thinking about, all that sort of a thing. So basically what I'm going to be doing here is a preliminary tier list ranking the StarCraft campaigns. And we are going to go through them, and then I am interested in your guys' opinions in the comments. So don't get mad at me, I might not be thinking about everything, this is just a rough draft. But let's begin. By the way, all the footage is just going to be of random campaign missions. It's not super important. As I said, it's not edited to be a main channel video. But yeah, let's jump right into Rebel Yell, which is the first StarCraft 1 campaign. The story is, by the way, I'm not going to be like going through categories straight up for the most part. However, the four things that I kind of want to judge on are the storytelling, the vibe, the gameplay, and the difficulty. So I think that all of these are very important, and you can kind of fit most of the things within those. Like, the storytelling includes the characters, and the vibe also includes the characters. Like, they have to be acting in a way that is fitting with the story, that sort of thing. So, in Rebel Yell, we meet all of the main characters, Jim Raynor, Sarah Kerrigan, Mengsk, all that kind of stuff. We learn about the Zerg and how the Confederacy wants to control them. Then Mengsk is like, hey, we should stop the Confederacy from doing that. And then he uses the Zerg to fight the Confederacy instead, and then abandons Kerrigan when he calls him out for being a hypocrite, Jim leaves him, and Mengsk topples the Confederacy and becomes Emperor. Sorry if I'm not perfect here. I'm kind of working off of some notes that I wrote down, but they're very brief. So I think that it's a pretty good story that they have to both introduce the universe as well as set things up for later and tell a compelling narrative that is pretty simple to deal with, right? Like, it's not super complicated. The characters are all solid, but I kind of feel like the betrayal of Kerrigan could have used an extra mission of build-up. We know that there were some cut missions. Originally, there was like 12 total missions in this campaign. 2 of them got cut out, one that introduced the Protoss a little bit more, and one that had to do with Kerrigan going on to Tarsonis before being abandoned. And I wouldn't be surprised if originally those were going to flesh things out a little bit more. They ended up being cut, and I think that the betrayal of Kerrigan as a result is a little bit too brief. But from a gameplay and mission design, I think that the campaign is phenomenal. Rebel Yell is a teaching campaign, right? It is assuming that you have never played an RTS before. It is giving you a setup to teach you how to play RTS. And I think that it does that amazingly well. It, just anybody can learn to play StarCraft through it. The missions, particularly in the beginning, tend to be very specific. They give you one challenge to overcome. For example, mission number 2 is basically a straight corridor to fight Zerg, but you do have to go up and down a couple of ramps, and you have to be able to do basic production. Or mission number 4, which is the one where you have to drop onto the island. I think that that sort of thing is really important. The island is not hard to beat. However, just the fact that you have to either move your floating buildings, use dropships, or use wraiths are all good teaching tools that then come back later in the final 3 missions, which are all the big open macro missions, right? That's kind of where they do it. And those all benefit from you having those lessons. For example, being able, you are on the big push, mission number 8, all your buildings start floating, and you know you can fly them over and land them in a place because you've done that on mission number 4. Or the very final mission, there's a giant gap and the ion cannon's on an island, and you know that you can do that because you've done mission 4. You know how to beat it. Fundamentally, you will never get stuck there. I think that's really powerful learning. Additionally, the difficulty is done in a very smart way. The attack waves are really, really, really easy. So if you look at like mission number 5 and mission number 10, the attacks at 10 minutes might only be 50% stronger on mission number 10. but the enemy defenses are an order of magnitude superior. This, in my opinion, is a fantastic way to add difficulty to the game, force the players to use the tools and the knowledge that you've been giving them without sucker punching them as they're still learning how to play. As a result, I think that Rebel Yell is an all-around great campaign and deserves an easy A tier. Next up is Overmind, where we take the role of the newly born Cerebrate tasked with protecting a chrysalis, which then eventually hatches into Kerrigan, who invades a science vessel so she can unlock her Ultra Instinct ability. And then, when she's super powered up, she gets duped by Tassadar, and Zaz, the Cerebrate, is assassinated. I think, just right there, I think that's really cool. StarCraft 1 had very rudimentary triggers, and when they were making the campaigns, using that sort of a thing to hoodwink the player and show them the guile of the Protoss, despite us beating them, because that's really the only way that missions could go, is like a total elimination, that was really cool. I just wish that the Cerebrates were a little bit more differentiated before that happens. Before Zaz is killed, it's kind of difficult to remember which one is Dagoth and which one is Zaz, particularly on your first playthrough. And he's just not super memorable as a character. But despite Zaz being killed, the Overmind isn't deterred. He then decides to invade Ire, he defeats the Protoss, and takes the planet. I think that the alien invasion vibe is done really well here. While StarCraft 1 is a mostly aggressive elimination challenge campaign, no matter which race you play, the Zerg still manages to feel like quite a bit more of an invading force, which is great, it's perfect. The Overmind is also just such a cool character, I really like him. The Cerebrates, as I said, are neat, but I feel like they need the differentiation. An infested Kerrigan has a lot more personality than the human one. She's arrogant, cocky even, and watching her get humiliated by the Templar really sets up this, what is basically a mystery faction in a very good way. I do think the difficulty of the campaign is its most problematic aspect, though. It's kind of all over the place. Why is Mission 3 so dang hard? Why is the final mission a total meme? This campaign has scaling issues, and you never know exactly what you're gonna get. Additionally, the mission design can be a bit iffy at times. Like the mission where you can't let the Dark Templar escape and there's 3 different escape places, it's ridiculously easy besides the fact that it has a cloaked auto loss condition. It doesn't feel great either way. But I think that the Overmind campaign has a lot of really strong things going for it, in addition to those downsides. So I'm going to give it a middle-of-the-road B tier. So we get to the Protoss campaign before Brood War, The Fall. In my opinion, this is the most forgettable campaign in StarCraft. We meet the Giga Chad Phoenix, who slashes his way through some Zergs, we find a Cerebrate, we kill it, but oh no, it got reincarnated, which is something that we already knew, but I guess they didn't know it. Even though the Overmind talks about it regarding Zaz's death, which I guess means Tassadar knew about it and his people because they were using Dark Templar. I don't know. But yeah, they can reincarnate. So Aldaris gets mad that Tassadar didn't tell them that they could reincarnate. And then he didn't also blow up the infested planets like he was supposed to. So we get sent to find Tassadar. Turns out he made a Jim Raynor friend, and then we go and make a Zeratul friend. And then we come back and we make a Phoenix friend, and he's a Dragoon now. But Tassadar has violated the law, so he has to go to jail. And then we instantly break him out. And there's multiple missions of civil war going on. And then they all remember at the very last minute, oh, we should probably go kill the Overmind. And that's what really annoys me about this campaign. All of the Tassadar civil war stuff is happening while they are on Ire. The Ire that the Overmind has just been chilling on. What has the Zerg been doing during all of this? They're fighting against an existential threat to themselves, and the Zerg just never shows up. It's just this isn't my fight, bro. Politics is too complicated. We just want to destroy the universe. I don't know, dude. It's wild. And when you think about it, it doesn't make very much sense. Most of StarCraft does a pretty good job at remembering that the other factions exist while things are going on. That's one of the things that people really like about it, is that the factions are well developed for the most part. But The Fall completely drops the ball. Rhymed. The long tangential storylines that kind of forget they're supposed to be in fairly dire situations with the Overmind. Because, I don't know, I guess the Overmind's DoorDash arrived and he's like eating chow mein while just watching the Protoss Civil War. I don't got a clue. The mission design is also kind of weird. The beginning and the end of the campaign I think are fine, but the middle is really, really brief. It's 3 really quick missions in fast succession. As a result, the connective tissue is a little bit lacking. By the way, I'm talking about normal gameplay, not cheesing stuff, because that's obviously completely different in terms of how fast things are, but in this case, it's even faster then. I also feel that there was a bit of a waste with Tassadar, who was set up in the Zerg campaign as a socially adept manipulator type, right? Like, first thing he does is he hoodwinks Kerrigan. And then that never comes up in this campaign. He doesn't use his social adeptness in order to solve the issues. He doesn't trick anybody. He doesn't do anything like that. He just instantly gives up and makes other people solve the problem. And then the icing on the weird cake is that he just decides to sacrifice himself after we've cleared all the Zerg hives and defeated the Overmind. We already won, buddy. Like, sure, come on, just get Zeratul to stab the Overmind, please. He does 100 damage with his Psy Blade. You can tell this campaign frustrates me a little bit. The difficulty, on the other hand, pretty good. I think that the last mission is quite hard, which is great. It can be a little bit too punishing because you're on opposite sides, so if you misclick once, all your stuff in an army dies. Don't really like that. However, I do think that it's got a good scaling, and it is the final mission for the final campaign in base StarCraft 1, so it should be the hardest. All in all, I think the fall rhymes too. Has to be the first C-tier campaign. Fundamentally, the game sets the Protoss up to be these enigmatic people, and then when you finally get to play as them, you just get an episode of Jerry Springer. Like, it's just like domestic problems, and that it just doesn't quite live up to the expectations that were built, which I think is a shame. So yeah, C-tier. I think that Blizzard agreed with me when it comes to most of the criticism that I gave the fall, because as soon as the Brood War campaign starts, the stand, it fixes a lot of those issues. It instantly starts off with Ire being lost. Despite the Overmind having been slain, the Zerg are still immensely and immediately powerful. At the Protoss retreat to Shakuros, the Zerg follow. They decide that they need to go get 2 rocks to activate the Xel'Naga Temple and blow the Zerg away. Kerrigan tells them that with the Overmind dead, she's regained control of herself and offers to help, because she doesn't want to be controlled by the second Overmind that is growing on Char. You know what? That makes sense. I think that's actually a pretty good setup, and it allows you to get non-Protoss characters in there, which is great. So they get the rocks, they install them into the temple, and boom. Oh, I kind of forgot the part where Kerrigan betrays betrays them and kills Aldaris because he didn't trust her, which definitely proves him right. So, whoops. Sorry, Aldaris, I didn't mean to forget about you. This campaign does a lot of things right. The Protoss get the feeling of being on the back foot constantly. They're an elite faction of warriors who can absolutely bulldoze through things when they're at force and fighting, but they can't actually win entire wars, just battles. And Kerrigan's fake out was interesting for the time, and foreshadows her own campaign down the road. And Aldaris being right, I think, was nice to some extent. Like, the Conclave may have been really annoying, but they were also able to look a little bit more objectively at some things like Kerrigan. So, I think that, being the first Brood War campaign, this is where mission design also got significantly more complex. You can tell that they have more tools and experience with the editor, because the difficulty and the variety in the missions are much, much better. The difficulty is pretty consistent, variety is really high, a bunch of different objectives, really nice training and stuff to work with. I like it a lot. The stand does a good job at salvaging the Protoss campaign, though it does suffer a little bit still from being forgettable because it is 8 more Protoss missions after doing the previous 10, which makes everything kind of run together. All in all, I think that this campaign deserves a B. Remember that B is a very solid grade and A's are exceptional. So B is a nice place to be. With that said, let's talk about the Iron Fist, better known as the UED campaign. We are given a ton of new characters really, really quickly. We get Stukov, Dugal, and Duran, all introduced within the first 5 minutes. And the UED, well, I mean, there's just not that much time to do stuff. It blitzes in, they secure a headquarters, they steal a bunch of battlecruisers, get a side disruptor, destroy Korhal in the span of 2 missions, fail to arrest Minsk, Stukov gets killed, and they capture the Overmind. It is a very rapid blitz. It is a lot. And I think they do a good job of showing how absolutely overwhelming a new and mysterious enemy is when they're striking before you're prepared. All of the lines in the sands were drawn from all the factions, and then the UED comes in from left field and smashes everything not named Protoss. They actually do fight the Protoss once, but I mean, the Protoss gets Minsk away, so the Protoss kind of won there. You know what I mean. I also think that the missions in this campaign are pretty darn good if you don't cheese them. A lot of my favorite StarCraft 1 missions are in this campaign, and it has a lot of characters that appear, particularly ones that are fairly beloved, and yeah, it's really just a solid campaign, which is why people I think are going to be kind of pissed when I decide to give this a B. Because honestly, I think the campaign is too short. It's 8 total missions, and I think that it needs another mission before the invasion of Korhal, and then maybe one after Stukov was killed, but before the finale. The first one, to help establish camaraderie between Stukov and Dugal. I think that is sorely missing. They really, really need some dialogue together, and maybe a mission where they're like actively working in unison and get to talk, so that the impact of Duran killing Stukov and destroying that bond would be felt a little bit more. And then the mission after Stukov is killed, before the finale, so that we could see Dugal process what happened. And the grief of being misled, and maybe a little bit of change in character from what he was before, something like that. The pacing and the tempo of the Iron Fist campaign make it very memorable, but also doesn't provide enough of the actual UED character dynamic. And for that reason, I do have to give it a B, because, it's so close to an A, but I just want a little bit more from that. This brings us to the final StarCraft 1 campaign, the Queen of Blades. The side disruptor is breaking Kerrigan's control over the Zerg, so Kerrigan convinces Jim and Phoenix to help her out, claiming that once again she's free from the Overmind's control, so she's totally a good guy. I guess nobody, they were fighting on Ire when the stuff happened in the Protoss campaign, and I guess when Aldaris was betrayed, nobody bothered to tell them what happened. Probably should have kept Phoenix in the loop for that one, but sure, why not? Either way, Jim helps her destroy the disruptor. Phoenix fights a Kelmoran Combine, grabs a bunch of money. Manx gives Psy emitters in exchange for getting his planet back, and everybody flippin' hates the UEDs, so they're all willing to go blast them. But Kerrigan's not a very nice lady. She betrays them all. Duke crashes the NORAD-16. Phoenix undergoes brooding mitosis, and the Dominion and Daylom beaten up, and yeah, now it's just the UED. And then the UED gets beaten up for a bit, and then the Dark Templar get beaten up for a little bit, and then everybody's comes together so that Kerrigan doesn't have to walk over to them and beat them up. Yeah, so basically, the Queen of Blades campaign is pretty consistently agreed on to be a fantastic StarCraft campaign, because it turns out, the Zerg being the destroyers of everything is pretty neat. And there is a huge diversity of enemies in this campaign, which is really nice. A lot of the earlier campaigns have had an issue where you fight either 1 or 2 matchups over and over and over. You fight everybody here quite a bit. That's awesome. The game ending with the big bad winning was pretty novel for the time, particularly when you are the one playing as the big bad. And having missions where you start with stuff like 10,000 minerals or doing the sneak attack type stuff, that was also super novel for the time. As a result, yeah, everybody likes this campaign. It might not be the most crazy thing by today's standards, but when they were made, these were novel things, and they ended up being replicated a lot because of how good they were. And you gotta give credit to the OG, right? I think the Queen of Blades campaign gets an A and should be darn proud of it. So next comes Wings of Liberty, which is StarCraft 2, unlike StarCraft 1. And that brings a little bit of a challenge in the way that I've been doing this. I've been doing a little brief recap of all of the missions, right, of the story, so that people can remember. But StarCraft 2's story is way longer every time, like it's as long as an entire expansion every time, and Wings of Liberty is taken in different, like, crazy order. So I'm just gonna assume you kind of know what happens for the next, for the rest of the campaigns. So Wings of Liberty, yeah, let's go with this. What a campaign, right? Well, Wings of Liberty does suffer from a couple issues, like the main criticism people have are being unhappy with Jim softening his stance on Kerrigan, and in the time between StarCraft 1 and 2, you know, at the end, in the Zerg campaign, the Queen of Blades campaign was like, I'm gonna be the one that kills you, and now he's like, I'm gonna be the one that donates $9.99 to your Twitch, that sort of thing. And it's not really, yeah, I can definitely agree with that. That is definitely the biggest criticism. However, everything else in Wings of Liberty is incredible. The branching paths, the huge numbers of unique units, the upgrades, the characters, branching mission chains, insane variety in mission designs. Wings of Liberty was an absolute revolution in RTS development. The simple fact that I can't rate things like difficulty in this game, because if you found a mission too difficult, you could always just go somewhere else and come back later with more stuff, shows how different StarCraft 2 was from its previous games. How different Wings of Liberty was. Basically, every character from this game is either beloved or a doctor. Every unit is someone's pet unit that they adore, and the finale at Char is absolutely epic in terms of scope and scale. All In is maybe the best RTS mission ever made. I think many people would agree with that. It is simultaneously makes you feel like you have the might of all of the Terran, and yet nothing can truly stop the swarm, and you're only making it out by the skin of your teeth. That is such a hard balance to do. It is so good. There's a reason that Wings of Liberty broke a ton of sales records when it came out. Not just for RTS, but for strategy games in general, and some just generic game sales records. This campaign revolutionized what real-time strategy was in a genre. It has always there's always been like flirtations with RTS elements in RPG elements in RTSs. But before Wings of Liberty, it was just a little bit of a tease. Wings completely embraced those RPG elements and flourished because of it. I believe that Wings of Liberty is still the best RTS campaign ever made, and it easily earns an S tier. Which unfortunately leads us into Heart of the Swarm. To me, this campaign felt like they saw how a lot of players really liked the Kerrigan power fantasy in the Queen of Blades campaign, and then they just decided to do that again. But this time without the build-up and starting from zero technology, so a lot of it feels wrong. It just doesn't feel good to do stuff like beating Warfield with Zerglings, Banelings, and Aberrations. That sort of thing should be a challenge run, not one of the default experiences. That should be a thing I should have to make a video on, because Warfield should be amazing. Why did Minx keep Raynor alive instead of actually killing him? Both of those would have lured Kerrigan out to him. Why does Primal Kerrigan look the same as Infested Kerrigan but purple? They could have at least changed things up a bit. Heart of the Swarm is salvaged because of Zagara, Stukov, Dahaka, and Abathur. They're all fantastic characters. Mengsk is a fun villain. The finale on Core Hall is genuinely good, but so much of the campaign doesn't do it for me. To top things off, I'm still salty that they marketed the campaign as having 27 missions, but 7 of them turned out to be 2-minute evolution missions, making it far shorter than Wings of Liberty or Legacy of the Void. Heart of the Swarm desperately needed more time for Kerrigan to build up before launching her giant invasions. Some stuff at the beginning as a buffer, maybe about 7 missions worth of stuff. Sadly, for me, Heart of the Swarm gets a C tier. Legacy of the Void, on the other hand, I think did a much better job at dealing with the idea of rapidly escalating plot while having normal campaign progression. Early missions on Shakuras and Core Hall both have an allied presence that makes it feel a bit more reasonable to be overcoming these crazy odds. Though, on Shakuras they're kind of off on the sidelines. But for Core Hall, definitely they do it really well. While the mission variety in the campaign was super unique, the missions themselves have enough different stuff going on that I don't personally think it's repetitive. It's just one of those solid frameworks, similarly to defend for X minutes, or destroy that objective over there. Now it's destroy 4 different objectives, which I think is fine. The unit variety is also fantastic, though I wish that some of the really bad stuff had been buffed to maybe have one patch after it comes out and you can make the spin lots better. The Spear of Adun is also a nice attempt at dealing with the Kerrigan problem. It is immensely powerful, which it feels good to use, but it's more limited in use. It can't solo the entire game on Brutal for you like Kerrigan can. But instead, I don't know, Kerrigan always annoys me. The Spear of Adun definitely has problems. Some of the things are definitely overpowered. Everything being the same resource makes stuff like Deploy Pylon feel very bad. But overall, I think it is a very fun system, and it can be very gratifying to use. The Protoss characters are also some of the most fantastic and well-developed ones in the storyline. The Phoenix Taldaran storyline particularly, I think, is Blizzard's best StarCraft writing. That is a genuinely well-told story. And then Karax is fun. He's just a little goober nerd. Alarak's introduction, one of the most popular StarCraft characters for a reason. He's just very, very fun. But there is one blemish that might be on screen right now, and that is the epilogue. But not the epilogue overall, just the epilogue story. It just isn't super satisfying as a conclusion. Which is a shame, because in terms of gameplay, I actually think that the missions are good. The first mission, Into the Void, which is the one we have going on behind me, I think it's a great mission. I think it's one of the best StarCraft missions. It's really fun. Having these allies that are really competent with you and pushing up all together and that stuff is really lovely. The Amon, Kerrigan, Zelnaga stuff is a sad blemish on the campaign, though. But despite that, I still think that the overwhelming majority of it is good enough that I'm gonna give Legacy of the Void an A. Probably a bit of a low A though. It's not cusp and S tier here, unfortunately. But A, yeah. And last but not least is Nova Covert Ops. I decided to judge this the same as the other campaigns despite being a DLC campaign because, it's on the campaign screen and it's also about the same size and price as one of the Brood War campaigns, right? Like Brood War was $40, which means that it's about the same. Unfortunately, unlike the Brood War campaigns, I find Nova Covert Ops to be lacking. By this point, Blizzard had absolutely figured out how to make missions that were never bad. With the exception of the Xanthos, though, I was never really impressed with any of the missions. Though I will give it credit, I think Xanthos is one of the best boss fights in RTS. It is really, really good. The rest of the campaign, kinda meh though. There's no part of Covert Ops that I can point to and go, wow, this sucks. But I also don't adore anything. Besides the mix and match equipment system, both for Nova and the units, I do like that quite a bit. It is really fun to work with, though I honestly think they could have and should have gotten a little bit more crazy with it. Mechanically, I think the campaign is firmly in the good territory, but the story and the characters are weak. General Davis is not particularly interesting. Janara is a meme at best. Rigel is flat and uninteresting. And worst of all, it's a campaign focused around Nova, and we learn next to nothing about Nova as a character. No personality, no development. At the beginning of the campaign, we know that she's a no-nonsense ghost who will do whatever it takes to get the job done. And at the end of the campaign, we know that she's a no-nonsense ghost who will do whatever it takes to get the job done, and was mind-controlled for a little bit to place down some psi emitters for bad guys. That's it. I can tell you quite a bit about the things that Jim Raynor likes to do in his off time, or Matt Horner even, or Tychus, or Karax, or Artanis. Can't tell you a gosh darn thing about Nova, and I think that's a shame. Same with Kerrigan, by the way. Can't tell you much about her, and I think that that's just bad writing. It's unfortunate. I think Nova Covert Ops had the chance to set things up for potential StarCraft 3 or further DLCs, but it opted to tell a story that was passable but not exciting, intriguing, or really goes anywhere. In the end, Nova Covert Ops did a poor job of being about Nova, it had a disappointing lack of Covert Ops, and as a result, I have to give it a C. Alright guys, that's gonna be the end of this video. Please tell me what you think about this style of format. This is completely experimental, and I'm looking for feedback here, both in whether you like this sort of a thing, where this is basically just the rough notes I have for a potential main channel video. And I don't know if that's good content or not, but it does help me to just kind of say these things out loud. You know, it's how you get your brain working, and I would like to hear other people's feedback. If there's things that I've missed, if there's things that people do agree with. It's always really easy to just give all the criticism you have, so if you do agree with some of my things that I said, please say that as well. Keep it balanced, and let's just discuss. I don't think I was crazy off on anything, but I'm always interested in hearing your guys' opinion. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Giant Grant Game Archive, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.